Hi, I'm Tony Riddle, and this is the NatLifePod, a platform for conversation to help close the gap between wellness as an industry and wellness as a state of being. Big shout out to this episode's sponsor, XL Coffee. XL are renowned organic coffee producers here in the UK who have gone to extraordinary lengths to ensure their coffee is mold-free and has kept its antioxidant potency. XL are waking up the world of coffee. I'm a big fan and recommend you go give them a try. Use discount code NatLifePod at checkout. Details are in the show notes. On this episode of the NatLifePod, I'm behind the mic with Rhys Thomas. Rhys is an ex-international rugby player who at just 29 years of age suffered a massive heart attack during training. To save his life, Rhys underwent a quadruple bypass and now lives life as a battery-powered half-man, half-machine. But this wasn't rock bottom for Rhys. It's the trauma that unravelled post-open heart and post-coma that became that foundation. We unpack the trauma-led chaotic lifestyle that finally led to Rhys's close community stepping in to help through intervention, and the awakening that followed rehab. I firmly believe that we have everything inside ourselves to be the change. And this conversation certainly serves as confirmation of that belief. To be honest, this intro really isn't going to do this pod justice. But what I will say is that this is a real roller coaster of a story, and one that speaks to how hitting rock bottom can become the solid foundation of which to rebuild a life that you love. Now I hope you find as much inspiration from this conversation as I did. Much love. We're rolling, Rhys. Rolling with Rhys. Hey, Rhys.
Hey, Tony.
How you doing, brother?
Yeah, fantastic.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining. Thanks for sitting across the table with me.
My pleasure.
We first met at medicine, I believe, right?
Indeed.
Yeah. And we had a bit of a moment we were discussing. And something dropped in for me. I have this language of it's a huge privilege to be alive, right?
Mm.
And you are definitely one of those people that can speak to this. You know, what a privilege it is to be alive. What I first picked up on talking to you before I understood any of your history was just loving energy, like just really happy, content it felt. And then we started to unpack a bit your story. And I was like, oh my God. So I think there's such power in it. And I'm just made up that you're here today and that can share some of that story because there's so much in it. And also just that speaking to that piece about it being a privilege to be alive right now, right? Big backstory. But I think we can start with where you are today because we just did a bit of breath right now, right? And you coach a bit of breath.
I do.
So we did a bit of down regulation breath just before getting behind the mics. And what was it you said afterwards?
Nerves are gone.
Nerves are gone.
Gone.
You know?
So simple.
So simple.
3 minutes.
3 minutes, yeah.
Down regulation.
Mm-hmm.
Coherent. In the body.
Yeah.
I think people just overlook it because they think it can't be that easy. And it is, isn't it?
Yeah, we put a breathing app on for 3 minutes.
Literally.
Tempo was inhale for 4, exhale for 6, 3 minutes, grounded. Bridging the gap between wellness as an industry and wellness as a state of being, right?
Absolutely.
It's a quick in, you know?
Yeah. And I think we're at that point, right? Between the talking element of well-being and the understanding the mental health aspect. Of course, there is a stigma and all of that that's attached to it. But I think that we get into that part of doing, especially in the corporate space, business, and, you know, how do we start, you know, doing service to well-being in the workplace?
Yeah.
And breath work, I'm surely there can't be an easier way, Tone. 3 minutes. And you can do it at your desk. Do it on the train, bus.
Do it at your door before you enter the home.
Literally.
So you can leave the work outside the house.
Yep.
Or between room to room if you're working from home. Yeah, I think stripping it even, stepping back a bit and thinking school. I always think that school environment, that imagine we were given such a simple tool, because everyone has an iPhone now, kids all have smartphones. Here are tools within them, so they're more like a tool, not a toy. Here's a breathing app, and we do this, before walking into an exam or walking into a class environment that we might be stressed with.
Exams.
And then that then moves forward into the workspace, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, the younger the better, of course.
Yeah. So you're holding talks, right? You're going out into that world, speaking out in that world right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, airing my story.
Yeah. Do you bring breathwork into that? Do you bring breathwork into that environment?
I do. I mean, I pay lip service to it, post, because at the minute that part, it's a topic that I'm going into. It's about delivering about the breathwork element, because I train first in conscious connected, because I love the trauma side of the ability for breath to transform and to reach that inner landscape, which drew me to that industry from my own experience, and then more recently kind of navigating into the functional science, nervous system side of it, and how to learn to self-regulate, down-regulate, up-regulate, whatever you desire, and understanding of how to, deliver that in the workspace. Also, because I also am in the education sector with the charity, taking it into schools, because we've got certain different talks that we deliver in the education space around wellness, well-being, mental health, nutrition, embodied movements, all these kinds of things. So it's just kind of building that education, but also the understanding. So I'm kind of going through that at the moment with a mentor coach.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it's in progress too.
Well, it's happening right now.
Yeah, it's happening right now.
And there's space for that to grow.
Of course.
I guess for those that don't know, let's speak to conscious connected breath. What's conscious connected breath? What is that to you?
So conscious connected breath is a way to tap into your subconscious, by connecting your breath consciously, and by breathing each inhale to each exhale without pause. So just by being present, by being conscious with the breath, and focusing on that circular type breath, where it's an open mouth technique, where we can engage in the tempo, the depth of breath, the breath that we require. Each journey is your own. There's no competition. It's not a race. It's all just about you in the moment, and just having a look what's in that moment of immense presence, and just allowing the breath to teach and guide. It's going to take you into your inner landscape. And my first experience was the first time I had really gone inward without any therapeutic help. Like, I'd done a shit ton of therapy, but I'd never at that point really delved deep into my own inner landscape of my own accord. I'd done, a lot of praying, meditation, journaling, which brought me some level of peace. But then when I first had my first breathwork experience, it was just this deep inward journey that released and brought up so much for me, that when I finished the session, I was like, oh my God, like whatever that was, I need to go and learn it and take it out into the world. And literally I started doing that the minute I left that retreat. And like, it's been such a gift to me to be able to show others, to lead them back to their breath, to, for the breath. And I think it has so many, crossovers for me in life, that life-giving force of air, of being alive, of being present, and, going into that from the outside to the inside, and seeing what's under the bonnet, and also holding the space for others to experience that. Having had my experience, that's another part, that the space holding element of giving the breath to others is something that brings me a tremendous amount of value.
Yeah. transformational breath, right? In a way.
In so many ways, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't do transformational breath
But it is
in its essence, but it is transformational.
Transformational. Right?
Undoubtedly.
Yeah, I always say, we have this ability to change our perception within a breath.
Mm.
And that might not mean just one breath, but even just the awareness of a breath is enough to go, I'm here.
Yeah.
Arta Pauling, you know Arta?
No.
Arta really deep in that conscious connected breath circles, but it was often this, punctuated in amongst the day, just one breath. Just being aware of a breath, tick it off. Oh, there's a breath.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a breath. And it is enough to just go, I'm back in the room almost.
Yeah.
Of what's happening. But there is a deeper sense within that breath of where we can take it and the trauma that we can release, right? And you've mentioned therapy, so because we can be in therapy for years and years and years, right?
Decades sometimes.
Yeah, but again, sometimes we're processing still from such an intellectual level, right? And with the breath, it's almost again this opportunity to really unscrew that lid, to get into those deeper emotions that we've pushed down, right?
Absolutely.
For a long time. I love that within the men's work, I think. Because again, there is that pushing down. So you're holding men's circles as well with the breath.
I do my own stuff in South Wales, holding space a little bit for men, but I'm also been in the environment with just learning from the guys from Men Without Masks. So just like shadow facilitating, just kind of doing like an apprenticeship, I suppose, Tony, just because the value that I had from being in those spaces, being held by other men, being able to be vulnerable, speak your truth, but then also use these embodied modalities to go inward, but with other men. But also I think it's the realization in that the more you go in with your using these types of techniques, it all comes back, the things that need to be released or the insights that are come up, especially for me with breathwork. I always say like it's given us the gold, Tone. Like certain people always ask me like, what was the breathwork about? And I say, well, it gives you the gold, and I say, why do I fall asleep? And I'm like, well, because you're tired.
You need to sleep. Yeah, I know.
You're tired.
Yeah. While others are having these really profound experiences, and I want some of what they're having, but actually, no, you just need to sleep right now.
Exactly. So, it's listening to the body, right? And getting out of the head for 5 minutes. And it's just finding the medicine that works for you. And for me, mine was breath work. After years of looking in other places, because I was, sifting through all my lifetime of issues and traumas and developmental stuff. It was then, there's only so many therapies you can do. And then it was like, right, well, I've used pretty much the full array of them. And it's been great and I'm so much better off. And, I'm in a good place. I've been able to find peace and routine and discipline. And I've changed my life and my values and all these things. Fantastic. Great. Okay. Identification where I went wrong, addressing traumas from the past, like all of that stuff I can speak to and say, amazing. Like so grateful for all of that work. But then the real work was then when I found that embodiment. And for me, that was through the breath, because that experience that I had, my very first breath work, was just so profound that I was like, oh, wow. Like, what was that? What just happened? Let's go into it. And then that's just been a deep dive ever since, really.
Yeah. Powerful, right?
Incredibly powerful.
Yeah, powerful and deep. And there's been a fair amount of trauma there from that, from what we briefly unpacked at medicine. But it was only brief. And then when I started to look, who's Rhys really, right? And let's go back. And there was so much there, really. that you couldn't have possibly unpacked in that brief moment of medicine. I get that now. Now the accent, right?
Yeah.
Because it threw me a bit at medicine. I was like, where's this guy from? Because it's Rhys Thomas. So that's, and you were connected to Wales, and then, but you're from South Africa, right?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm from Johannesburg originally.
There we go. So it flipped me because I was like, there's Welsh there, but there's something, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, so we can go into Rhys kind of South Africa. So how was growing up in South Africa? How was that?
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know, I was, from a young age, Tone, like sport gave me my out. You know, it was my way to vent, to be seen. So I excelled from a young age. And I was outdoors a lot. You know, the weather, especially from Johannesburg, which was where I was born and stayed till I was 18, you know, always outside.
Joburg.
Yeah, Joburg, you know, is a great place to grow up. The weather's mild pretty much all. I mean, don't get me wrong, the winters can get pretty fresh, but the days are still like 21, 22 degrees C. Not a cloud in the sky in the winter. It's dry, and I mean proper dry. Like the grass goes, the ground's super hard. But I mean, a lot of people, you know, barefoot.
Yeah.
They play rugby barefoot till they're 13 over there, mate. Literally no boots. It's wild. And but yeah, sport was my out, and the country was going through this crazy transformation, right, culturally.
Yeah, yeah.
Obviously, the end of apartheid. Mandela came into power in '94, and you know, I was just a kid. I didn't understand, you know, what had come before, and then obviously transitioning with that as a teenager into high school,
witnessing all of that,
of course.
Yeah,
and then being like in that first era where we were in the same spaces, in the same schools together. So it was a lot of change, and obviously the '95 Rugby World Cup, which Mandela played a huge part in bringing the country together. Like obviously everything he had been through, right? Awful situation. And for him to come out and show such, I don't know, amazing leadership and, you know.
True leadership, right?
True. And really uniting the country through the success of the rugby team and understanding that. And it really was like this, and I wasn't playing rugby at that point in my life, but having watched the World Cup I was at my auntie's house with my gran and my mum, and I was 12 years old. And when obviously they won that World Cup, I went to high school the next year then, and it really did bring the country together. And during, you know, what Madiba called his Rainbow Nation. So it was exciting, Tony. You know, it was great. Like, you know, I loved it. And going navigating through then into high school, I picked the ball up at 14, and I went to boarding school. I went to a boys only boarding school in Johannesburg, which was great. I really loved it, but I mean, it was tough. Like, it was hard, super disciplinarian. And to be honest with you, you know, there was a lot of, you know, there's a lot of carrot and stick, but there was a lot of stick. Corporal punishment was, even though it wasn't in play, it wasn't illegal, but in most part, because the prefects had been through corporal punishment, they were still aligned with, this is how you deal with, you know, anything that you break in the rules. This is the options you have. And
what do those options look like?
Well, you know, we weren't allowed to speak after X o'clock. The lights went out at, say, 10 o'clock. That was lights out. And then you weren't allowed to speak after lights out. You weren't allowed to, there were certain rules. And then if obviously you broke them, and it's like a big sleepover, right, Tone? With your best mates.
Yeah.
And so it's incredible. And you know there's a price to pay for when you do things wrong. And you know more often than not you're going to have to pay them.
Yeah.
And there was no, you know, it became like such an honest environment, because if they came through the door and they said who talked, if you didn't own up, everyone was getting it.
Yeah, yeah. It's a bit like the army, really.
Yeah, so there was no messing, you know. You had to just put your hand up, and then very often it was lashes. So cricket bats, hockey sticks, poles, you name it, and we would get lashed. It was pretty brutal. I'm not going to lie to you. You know, for many years, that's how it went. But we became hard to it. You know what I mean? At the end, it was normal. And because of my nature, I had a real issue with authority.
A bit of fire in your belly around that, yeah?
Yeah, I had no time for it. And so I was always pushing boundaries, but I was willing to take the consequence. And honestly, mate, I had an arse like leather, and they could double step me with a cricket bat and I wouldn't even budge. And I think that irritated them at some point.
Well, it's almost like saying it didn't hurt.
Yeah, literally. Even though my arse was black, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I remember my mum catching me in the shower one day on the weekend, because I only came home weekends, and she just caught a glimpse of me on my arse, and she was like just beside herself. And I was like, "You do not say anything." Because like if you tell, the prefix will be 10 times worse. So I was like, just don't say anything. And
Hard for mum, right?
Yeah.
Well, also they've put you in that environment, right? So
of course. But the strength, what that did was create like a incredible bond within our friendship group of like resilience. And, you know, we started with, I don't know how many boys started, a significant number, but by our last year, I think there was like 50 odd of us, like the hardy few.
Well, you almost have a bit of humour behind that. Look at the state of my arse today. Were you out bruising one another? Was
literally. And then by the time we got to our last year of school and it was time to hand it back, it was like this. At this point, it was completely like, that cannot happen.
Wow.
And when obviously we did, because we got removed from those environments, but it was like later on, you know. But yeah, so it was an interesting time. But you know, at the same time, it was everything I ever wished, Tony, was to when I was in the school, to be at the pinnacle was to play for your team, your school's first team. It was everything, right? And they had a red jersey like Wales's with a white collar. And it was everything. We used to sing to them. We didn't go like home straight on the weekend. We'd always go and watch the first team. So it was like, they got numbers up to like 5,000-10,000 people watching on a Saturday from 17, 18 years old. So, it was a big deal. And I reached that at 17, 18. And it kind of set me up into this space where I was like, oh, I want this. I want this dream of being an international rugby player one day. And that's kind of the journey I followed then for those few years.
And how did you get picked up? How did you get picked up in terms of the international level? How did that come around?
Yeah, so I got my first representative age grade honours at 18. And my dad was Welsh. And I had the opportunity to go to Newport to their youth team and just see if, I could make it, or that was the offering that I had. So I just thought, okay, well, may as well, like, just pop over, see what happens. I was pretty wild at this point, and I was only in the country 6 months, and I got selected to go on a World Cup, under-19 World Cup to Chile.
Wow.
And
how did that feel?
Amazing.
Yeah.
And we actually came fourth at that World Cup, and South Africa came fifth. So I was like, I made the right decision. I left mum and dad, best friends at home, to pursue this career. And it was easy. All I did was party for 6 months. I ended up going to a World Cup, and I thought, I'll just stick at it. And then, a couple of years later, Welsh 21s, very successful team, won the Grand Slam, and then signed my first pro contract. I was 3 years building into that starting position, and then I was selected to go on my first tour in 2006 to Argentina. And I came off the bench in Buenos Aires for my first cap. And
it's quite a rapid rise, isn't it?
It was 10 years from the first time I picked the rugby ball up at the age of 14.
Incredible.
To then starting for Wales. Coming off the bench, and then I gained 7 caps in over that 3.5 year period that I was with Wales. But it was a storm. It was a hurricane. It was wild.
Yeah. The heart attack.
Yeah. Yeah.
So from what I understand, it's from a collision, right? Is that when it?
Well, I had 2.
Yeah, the first one that came in.
Yeah, so I was 24.
Yeah.
Yeah. They couldn't pinpoint.
So that's pretty much that 10-year, right? That's that 10-year point.
Yeah, I'd literally had my first cap.
Yeah.
And then I came back, did that pre-season. I was super fit, feeling great. Couple of months into the season, I'd taken a big knock in the game, in the chest, but I'd also was the first season they legalized caffeine. So we had these drinks then, these powdered drinks with a tremendous amount of caffeine in it. And I remember it's the first time I ever did caffeine, and they were just, when you go in the change room, your jersey's hanging up, you got shorts and a packet, socks, all your stuff's laid out, your protein shake, everything's there. You just need to rock up and do it and put on and go and do business.
You're ready to roll.
Yeah, literally. So I go in and there's the stuff. Oh, what's this? Put a bottle of water in it, shake it up.
First time on pre-workout.
Literally, before my first game of the season.
Which you're already going to be upregulated.
I didn't need a psychener, bro. It was like I took, I don't know, like a tremendous amount of base or speed. It was like, and normally by like 60 minutes, I was, started showing indications of gassing, 60, 70 minutes, because I was a chronic mouth breather at this point. Well, yeah, it's my whole career. But I didn't even get tired. And an 80-minute game went in the changing room. And I was like, geez, like what the hell was that? You know what I mean? And then in the tent, I felt dizzy and I felt like a pain in my chest. And I stood up, literally, and I just went, boys, I think I'm having a heart attack. And obviously there's a long table of like rugby boys pissing themselves, just thinking, like, shut up.
Well, because you're like 24, right?
Yeah, post-match. I'm 24, and they're just all laughing. So I go to my physio and I'm like, oh, Mike, I think I've had a pull, mate. He's like, mate, it's post-exercise. He said, there's absolutely no chance. They pied it off. A couple of months later, it kept persisting. I was having these issues. I lay off the caffeine for a bit. And then after one of the games, I had a feeling in the game, like a tweak in my chest. And then I was getting these terrible symptoms post-match where I would feel awful. I'd be sweating buckets.
Yeah.
And I just thought, oh, this thing's coming on again. They diagnosed me with chronic indigestion, all these kinds of things, give me tablets. And I felt it coming on again. And then I was walking to the car to go get some shoes because my friends had come down from London. And I was with my brother, my ex-father-in-law, and my ex-wife. And I was walking to the car and I just decked it. And I just thought I was going to die, Tone. Honestly, it was, the pain was unbearable. Like my whole left arm went into spasm. I couldn't breathe. I was ripping my shirt off. I was vomiting. I thought it was the end, mate, if I'm honest. And the ambulance came, chucked the old ECGs on, and then they were like, oh, you've had a heart attack. And I just remember sitting up, what? No way. And they were like, yeah, no. And then they cleared that with an angiogram. And that next couple months was just a journey, people just saying, oh, you're not going to play again. Yes, you will. It was just an emotional roller coaster. I was in floods of tears. I'd just been capped. I was 24. My dream that all I aspired to be, I had achieved. And then they were going to just say no more. And I was just like, yeah, it was tough. The next few months were real tough. But then I had 6 months off and I started then in the European semi-final cup game, and I was overweight. I think my conditioners were scared to train me too hard at that point, so they were taking it easy on me. So I wasn't in great shape when I came back. I was overweight and not looking particularly healthy, I'll tell you. But I was fine then, 5 years.
And what's the lifestyle like at this point?
At that point,
because you mentioned like chronic mouth breather. What's nutrition like? What's the outside kind of social? What does that look like?
Yeah, I'm not great. Knowing what I know now, I mean, just would have been chalk and cheese from where I was. I thought a good healthy meal when I was in my early 20s was like chicken Kiev, peas and some, oven fries.
Yeah.
To me, that was like, oh, that ticks all the boxes. You know, like literally, I thought that was not a bad meal. And
well, I remember those days. They were like the experimental food days, weren't they? Really, you know, think of what you could buy in a box at that stage and put in the oven crunchies and all kinds of mad stuff. Yeah, yeah.
It was, you know, in my eyes, it was better to eat than not eat.
Yeah,
like that was my like thinking at that point, which was just bizarre. And so yeah, it could have been a lot better. I'm not going to lie to you. You know, I never was a drinker during the week. I never even kept booze in the house. That just wasn't what I was about. But when I went out, it was
out.
Flat out, you know, heavy drinking. And it's in the culture as well, you know, but I was brought up with it my whole life. Like it was go big or go home.
Mm-hmm.
So it was drink until you fall down, you know, and I was, you know, I was a smoker as well. And then
How much? What was this? Well,
I never smoked during the week, but
so again, when you were out,
yeah, you know, once I picked up a
hard.
beer, yeah, you know, I'd put a box of 10, 20 to the sword,
and
then you know, the occasional dabbling with other substances, you know, certainly in my younger years, and then yeah, my diet wasn't great. My conditioning was at points with different coaches fantastic, depending on, you know, what level I was at, and but it was always an issue I had. Tone was, you know, hard work beats talent when talent fails to work hard. And I think I found rugby, in most part, easy to get to the point that I got to.
Yeah, what kept dropping in for me was raw talent, right? There was a raw talent there, right?
Yeah, I found it very naturally, to push myself was the hard part. Like, how do I go from this level to that level? And I wanted to get to that, but I would do the minimal required. And that was kind of my attitude. It was always kind of like to prove something wrong, like to prove someone wrong, or it was kind of like a game that I used to play. I always had you know, I wanted to achieve greatness, but at the same time, I had my finger on the self-destruct button.
Yeah.
It was that conflict within me constantly, like achieving, being able to do so with minimal effort, and then having the finger on the fuck it button, ready to press at any moment.
Yeah, and also underpinning that or supporting that thought process is the level that you'd reached, right?
Yeah.
With that very behavior or belief.
And then what came with that as well, then, Tone, you know, once I achieved, you know, in Wales, being the Goldfish Bowl that it is, especially with rugby being the most popular sport in that country. I mean, it was, that can be argued now. I'd say football's getting there. But, and that came with a certain amount of, you know, bright lights, a little bit of attention and small amounts of fame, I would say, especially in my local villages. And, you know, if you went out, people would know because rugby was adored. Very, you know, passionate nation, especially when it comes to the game of rugby. So you felt kind of important. You know what I mean, Tone?
Yeah, and also you're a young man at 24 with possibly not the experience or the people that are around experience enough to be able to hold you within that, right?
No, not at all. And I got led in, you know, it just went south a little bit. The ego grew naturally and started to make poor decisions. And even, you know, post heart attack, you know, I laid off the caffeine short term. But when rugby's your job, you know, when you're playing away, say, you know, just for instance, say we're going to, you know, Galway to play a game. It's a Friday night game. We've chartered a flight. It's up in the morning early, breaking your routine. You're on a plane. You go in there. The rain's coming in sideways. It's freezing. It's not the place you want to be playing rugby on a Friday night when you haven't had good sleep. Your food routine's out. You know, it's hard to get up for those games, Tony. I'm not going to lie to you. You know, so then you want to lean on the caffeine for those ones, right? But I knew at the same time there's that sensitivity with my heart, but slowly over time, over those years, those games that were a struggle, you would be like, oh, I'll just have half a can of Red Bull, and I'll have a little bit of that sachet. And then obviously I didn't smoke over those periods, and then slowly that started to sneak back in, you know, because you forget, oh, I'm fine now. It was just it was a fluke, it was a one-off. What happened? It'll never happen again. And then.
But then it did.
Famous last words.
Yeah.
Yeah. 29.
29.
The gripper.
So it's 5 years between. So sorry, 5 years then.
Yeah, 24 to 29.
Yeah, so 5 years is, I guess, a big enough length of time, a large enough length of time for you to think, oh, yeah, it is a one-off, right? Easily.
Yeah.
And for those lifestyle kind of factors to then creep in again.
Absolutely.
So then 29, okay. The big one hits, right?
Yep. In the gym, doing a interval session on a bike, just did bog standard kind of Thursday session, Wednesday off in the gym. I think I had a bulging disc in my neck, C2, C3. So I was just being, I was probably on arguably my best season of my life. Pre-contractually agreed to move to France on very decent money. Things were looking good. I was sitting pretty.
Where was the ego that moment?
Flying.
Yeah.
Flying, mate. And I had about, I don't know, it was just a bog standard session, 45-minute on the bike, get the heart rate up.
Yeah.
Have a good blow. And about 5 minutes left, just bang. I knew straight away what it was because I'd had one before. Stumbled across the gym, obviously went into my physio's room, just told Pat, I was like, Pat, I think I'm having a heart attack. He literally grabbed the phone, called the ambulance. I stumbled away because I didn't want the boys to see me, Typical, I'm not going to show weakness in this time. I know it's a heart attack, but I'm going to just go and hide down here. So I just lay on the floor and I felt like I couldn't breathe again, but it felt more like an asthma type feeling. So I asked the physio to bring the asthma pump, the Ventolin, and I was just like smashing the Ventolin in me. And but that wasn't touching the sides. And I thought, well, it doesn't feel as bad as the last one. So we'll work through it. And then they'll just clear the clot again with the angiogram. And I'll be back.
So this is your thought process as you're.
I can vividly remember that was my thought process. I mean, I knew.
Where are the emotions at that point?
Oh no, there was none. No. That's what I was thinking, because I'd also signed my life insurance the day before, which I was very concerned about, because I thought it's not even 24 hours from signature to heart attack. Like, there's no way that, like, I was really worried about that having any, being, fit.
Yeah.
So when eventually the ambulance arrived, they chucked me in the ambulance, did the ECGs, and again confirmed I was having a heart attack, and I was absolutely fuming. I was kicking the ambulance. The guy was saying, "You need to calm down. You need to just relax." But I had my phone on me. And I rang my ex on the way to the hospital, and I said, "This
is ex now, but not ex."
My ex. She was my wife at the time.
Yeah.
And I just said, "You're not going to believe this." And she said, "What? You crashed the car?" And I went, "No." I've said, "I'm having another heart attack." She was like, "Shut up." I said, "I'm not joking." I said, "I'm literally on the way to the hospital now." And then obviously she, very emotional, and I just said, "Just you there." And then I rang my accountant. Just to I know I told her to ring the accountant, and then she rang the accountant and said, what do we do? And he said, "Just don't worry about it. It's fine." They did need CCTV footage to prove that I actually went into the office to sign it the day before. Had the accountant come to my house as he wished to, they wouldn't have had that, and they would have avoided it. So
wow, it's amazing, the mind though, where the mind goes.
That's where I was.
This process, like this.
Because I just thought about the kids at that point, right?
Yeah.
Are they going to be all right?
How old are the kids at this stage?
I was 29, so what am I now? 40. It's 19, 16, like 12, and like 9 maybe.
Wow.
More or less. More or less.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't, off the top of my head. And so, yeah, that's where I was mentally. And then when we were in, like straight into theatre on the slab, and then while I was on the slab, I remember being on there and the pain was intensifying quite rapidly. And I had the angiogram going up through my wrist. I had one through the groin this time, so they were double angiogram and coming from both ways because it had clotted in two separate places. But then the pain got like quite actually intense, and I was really struggling to breathe at this point. And then they were struggling to get through the clots. And then the surgeon just said, "Oh, listen, we need to take you for emergency bypass." No idea what that word even meant, Tony. So I was just like, do what you got to do.
29 years of age. I mean, the last thing you've been thinking about is a
do what you got
bypass.
to do. Like, as long as I'm back on the pitch in a couple of months, like, crack on. And then I got rushed in to the anaesthetist room, and my ex-wife and my ex-father-in-law were both in there. I just completely broke down. I was absolutely terrified at this point. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen to me. I just obviously hugged my ex-wife, gave her a kiss. I said, just tell the kids I love them. And that was it. They gave me the general, and I woke up 2 days later. And I was not in a good shape.
What entered the mind 2 days later when you wake up from that experience? What comes in? What drops in?
I was in a fight for my life, mate. I was not in a good condition. The surgeon had said that I was incredibly fortunate to survive the operation. He said if I wasn't in the condition I was physically, I would have definitely have been dead. He said when he opened my sternum, there were so many clots in my heart that he was pulling them out with his fingers. He said they were like worms. So he said when he opened me, said he didn't think that I was going to actually survive the operation. And obviously when I did come round, my heart was in such a bad state because I had lost a tremendous amount of tissue on my left side of my heart. So when I did come back round, it was just a lot of load on the right side because obviously it was doing the pumping and the sucking. And so what they did was I wasn't allowed to sit up for the first week post-op. So they put a balloon up my groin and they inflated it next to the heart to take the pressure off the beating of the heart, just to take the stress off it. And so I wasn't actually allowed to sit up. So I had to lay flat on the bed. I felt super nauseous, and they were doing everything to prevent me being sick, because being sick at that point would have put a tremendous amount of stress on the heart. So they were like, we will hit you with any drug on this planet to stop you from being sick. So tell us the instant you feel sick. And they were doing everything. And I was like, this is just, I just wanted to sit up. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what was going on. I knew I wasn't in a great state. I can't recall a hell of a lot of it. It was very vague. And then one of the earlier ones, I can remember, I thought they were putting me in the kitchen in the night. I remember my ex being there, and I was speaking to her. I was like, they put me in the kitchen in the night. I don't know why they're doing that. Like, I was going a bit delirious. I remember they gave me this stuff. They gave me this one anti-sickness stuff. And they said, at this point, do you have this, they call it a swan, these leads that come straight out from your artery in the neck. So there's a whole bunch. There's like 8 leads that go straight into the artery. So they have direct access to any meds they want to put into you, and it's bang, uploaded instantly into the heart. Just bang, like milliseconds. The minute they're basically, by the time the thumb moves, it's in, and you feel the impact of it. So and it's just like dangling out your neck like this, a whole bunch of leads, right? And they said, we're going to try this stuff to stop you being sick. They said, no, it has got a 1 in 1,000 chance of making you hallucinate and all the stuff. So I was like, whatever, just chuck it in, whatever. And they did it. And like I said, the minute she moved her thumb, I just went, phew. It was just like taking acid, really. And the ceilings started moving. It looked like oceans of sand. And my ex leaned over me to see if I was okay. And she was the front of like what looked like a pirate's ship riding on the sand. And I was saying to the nurse, no. I said, this isn't the right time for psychedelics. I don't want to be on this right now. I said, can you just take it off? And they were like, just enjoy it. And I was like, no, like this is not the right time, you know? And I just had to kind of ride that out then. And then it kind of really dawned upon me then when I had to go home, you know? And it took me about 5 minutes to walk from the door of the hospital to the car because I was so out of breath. Literally, I had to stop 3 or 4 times because I was exhausted. And then I couldn't sleep because I was having, well, I didn't know what they were at the time. I just thought I couldn't sleep. Like, what is this? And I was actually having panic attacks, constant panic attacks. I couldn't even close my eyes. But I didn't know what that panic attack was, Tony. I didn't even know what anxiety was. I didn't know what those 2 words were.
Is there no counselling process between...
Not between there and then, no.
And getting you home?
No.
No.
So I just went home and, you know, my ex-wife would just sit with me, like lie with me, but I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I thought I was dying. Like I thought I was like choking, or I couldn't breathe or swallow, which was awful because I couldn't sleep. I had like insomnia because I had this huge fear, obviously, but I didn't understand it because I couldn't put, like, what is this? What is this feeling I'm experiencing? What is it? And then I got taken back to the hospital, and it was a panic attack. So then they said, you need to learn how to control the breath. Bizarre, right? Now that's what I do in part. I went to a therapist who gave me some very basic breathing techniques just to help me get through that. But I also just had to use those, but also tell myself it's okay, just to get some sleep, Tony, because I was shattered. Like I'd gone through this huge trauma and I couldn't sleep. I couldn't close my eyes. I was exhausted. I was delirious. My one eye was wonky. Yeah, it was tough. And but then
where are the emotions in this point?
I was just in.
Are you in just
survival mode?
Yeah.
Pure survival mode at this point. Like there was no thought to anything other than I just need to survive. Get through this part, then we can navigate the next things that come forth. And then when I was able to go to sleep, I couldn't lie on my back flat because I couldn't breathe. So I had to like lay inverted for a little bit. And then once that started to settle a little bit, then it dawned upon me then that obviously rugby was gone. I mean, I couldn't even walk 10 meters, Tony, without stopping 3 times.
So that's the dream gone.
Dream gone.
Identity, I guess, wrapped up in rugby with the ego that's within that, right?
And my whole life being super active.
Yeah.
I can't even walk up a flight of stairs without stopping 3 times because I'm so out of breath. Yeah, it hit me like a ton of bricks, mate. And it got worse gradually until 2013. I couldn't carry on in that way. I just could not, I couldn't bear my reality because I was so unwell. But at the same time, grateful for having the kids. But it was hard. That period for me is blurry because I was just so unwell. It was my 30th birthday, and I remember I went with my ex to Mauritius. I got some very good friends that live there. And it was awful. And I remember the doctor saying, listen, you may not have very long left, so just enjoy the time you have. So I remember, taking the kids to Mexico, and I went for my 30th to Mauritius and to see friends, and I went with my ex, and it was just dreadful, mate, because I couldn't breathe. I couldn't walk far. I'd be vomiting because I felt I would get super bloated in the tummy. And I just thought, this is like, there's not much longer left in the tank here, really. There can't be. And then that's when they said in 2013, you need a heart transplant. I had a transplant assessment in Birmingham. But then the last test that they did, so they said, you need to ring your parents, you need a transplant, and you're on the super urgent list. So I rang my mum and dad, said, I need a transplant. They flew over. And then the last test I did was a thing called a right heart catheter. So you're awake, they put you on a slab, they make an incision in your jugular, and they put this catheter in, and then they put this wire down. So you're awake, they just put local anesthetic in your neck, and you feel them putting the pressure on as they put the catheter into your jugular. And then you're looking on the screen next to you, and then they put an x-ray machine over, and they put the dye in, and you can see your heart perfectly on the screen. You're awake looking at it because they're in the right side of my neck. And it's a bizarre procedure. I got to say, we have them quite regularly, and it takes some getting used to. But they said, you've got pulmonary hypertension. We can't op on you now. Sorry. And that's that. And the only thing we can do is put this machine in you, but we just go home and digest this. And so we did, came back, and I was devastated. I remember being devastated that was there, but there was no further, there was no answer. There was just the unknown. Mm-hmm. And then they did say, your heart's in terrible condition. You probably got about 12 months to live. So then obviously the clock was on.
You got 12 months to live, but you can't have a heart transplant.
Yeah. And then I remember going away for a couple of months, but being anxious in that time, thinking, well, hang on, like the clock started, right? You've said that I've got X amount of time left of life. Like, come on, give me a little bit more than that. Mm-hmm. And then I'd go back up, and they said, all right, you need to have this machine, but it comes with also a lot of baggage, literally. And it's a huge procedure of which you are not in very good shape. You've got about a 50% chance of not making the op and all this kind of stuff. So I was like, listen, anything's better than the state I'm in now. I mean, I can't even walk. So that was it. I opted to have that. And then on the 1st of September 2014, they put that machine in me then. And I was in a coma for 2 weeks post-op. Very, very, they weren't almost able to put the machine in my heart because of the tremendous amount of scar tissue I had from the first op, because it was an emergency bypass. Then just to keep me alive, they didn't really look after the space so well. So I had basically, imagine underneath our sternum is like a sheath that covers the heart, and they have to cut through that. And then they obviously have to do the work with the bypass, etc. Put the blood out the body, and so that the lungs go down so they can access the heart, all this kind of stuff. And so all the amount of scar tissue. So you can imagine what a spider web would look like. Imagine just arteries and veins that's over my heart. Like, obviously, if you've got a virgin heart, you can see it perfectly. All the, everything you need to see and get to. But when obviously after the op, the body just heals and it covers. Scarring. So then to get to my actual heart was a nightmare. I think the op was, I can't remember the exact length, 10, 12 hours or whatever it was. I had 3 of the transplant surgeons they had to almost abort it after 6 hours. Anyway, they put it in. 2 weeks later, I wake up from the coma, which they tried to lighten me throughout every day or every other day. But when I was waking up, I just was in huge fits of rage. And that entire time I was in that coma, I was just living these different...
Well, this is where we got to at medicine.
Yeah.
I didn't have that whole story. We just got to this part where you were having these different lives, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, I'd love to hear more around those lives, because firstly, we were at Medicine Festival and there was music and people all around us. I was like, what's this guy been taking?
The shrooms are good,
Yeah, it felt like that.
Yeah, I mean, so it was just, and it was horrifying. I've had a lot of time to process that experience, but it was terrifying, Tony. It's the only way I can describe it.
I just want to say, because in this, because we're being quite light, and there's humor around this now, and that's testament again to the work you've done to be able to sit there and be so light. That's what I was so amazed by and blown away by.
Yeah,
that is real testament to the work you've done, right?
Yeah, well, it did break me too. It broke me. It broke me as a man. For 7 years, it destroyed me in every way, physically, mentally, emotionally. Mm. No, so I was never there spiritually during any of that. So it was necessary.
Yeah, I was about to say, is there now zooming out, observer Rhys, looking at all of that.
Yeah.
We'll get to the past lives again, but is there a part of you that has any happened for me within that?
Oh, yeah.
Rather than the, happened to me.
Yeah.
So happened to me versus happened for me.
Honestly, Tone, without a doubt, amongst my kids as well, the best thing that ever happened to me. Hands down. I've broke a cycle of heavy drinking males in my family for generations, I wouldn't have stopped drinking had it not been for that. And I don't think I would have been the person. I always had a good nature, as we all do, a heart of gold, but I just got lost. And then suffering brought me back to self. It broke me utterly into shards, hundreds of pieces. And then I had to piece that all back together. And then eventually find that salvation was within. But I needed that to happen to me. And I am grateful for every experience that I had. And I'm still in that process now because I need a heart transplant, right? I've got this machine still runs me to this day. Next year's 10 years. So I'm reminded of it every morning, Tony, when I have to plug myself in so that I don't die.
Yeah, because you have to charge this machine, right? So your responsibility every day is to ensure there's a charge in there. Otherwise, that's it.
Machine stops.
Machine stops, restarts, right?
Well, it's up to the right side if it could carry the load. But after being on the machine for almost 10 years now, the doctors say that it would be unlikely. So, yeah, I'm reminded.
Does that feel like a burden?
Daily. No, I mean, don't get me wrong. I look forward to the day where I don't have a bag attached to me and a wire that sticks out my guts that's attached to 2 lithium batteries that last 8 hours. And if they don't keep charge or I don't swap them after 8 hours, it can halt, and with it life. So, yeah, it's a daily reminder to be grateful and present.
And what a huge privilege it is to be alive.
Oh, God, immense. Yeah.
The past lives.
I know you love this one. You want to go there?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah. So when I was in my coma, it was horrifying to me at the time. It was horrifying because I felt like I couldn't get out. But obviously, being under the general for that length of 2 weeks, it felt like forever. Like it never ended. Like I lived, and I did have different lives, like I'll go into now. But even after I woke up, in the months thereafter, I would be triggered to a panic attack by the thought of what occurred. And it took me a long time to reflect and look deeply into the meanings and try and sift through actually what the hell happened. Was it just a general anesthetic, but was it something actually a lot more? So I suppose that could be open to interpretation, but in my eyes, I see it as perhaps a past life experience or who knows, maybe a multi-dimensional experience. I don't know, but it was so vivid and so real that I can break it down for you now. Like on the day, one of the parts of the dream when I was in the coma was, and I used to call these nightmares, by the way.
Yeah.
Because that's how it felt for many years. And I was on the slab having my operation. Now, I used to think that I was awake to some degree, which now, actually, if you think about general anesthetic, they're only just numbing the mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you may not be able to feel the body either, but as we know, the body keeps the score.
Keeps the score, yeah.
So it remembers. And I've seen now since vividly that operation on the slab where I've been there on my back in the dressing, in the gown, with my chest fully open, with the heart, with my exact team, the surgeon, the nurses, all with their stuff on. Like, it was the theatre, right? Undeniably perfect.
Literally the theatre.
To the actual, in the theatre, on the slab, with the people, with their gloves, with the whites. It's there, like faced perfect as well,
Mm-hmm.
So and then on the right, I had a different team that were in India with Indian doctors, and but instead of general anesthetic, they used like a kind of witch doctor, and he was speaking this language, and he was right by me, and I was like terrified, right? And I was looking to both sides, and my nurse, transport nurse, was saying, if you touch them, you'll go to that side. But this little entity thing was touching my private parts, like, and I slapped his hand, and she went, you touched her? And I went, yeah. And she went, well, you have to go to them now. And I remember shifting into this, it was a different color. I went to a different hospital, and then I had the operation there. And then I woke up from it, and I was walking around the hospital, and it was a completely different hospital, a different place. And I was like, where's where's the family? Where's Paula? Where's these? And I was remember walking around, and I walked out into out of the front of the hospital, and there was like a taxi rank, and it was somewhere I'd never seen before, Tony. My skin was brown, and I was like, what the is going on here? Jumped in a cab, went into the city, and like obviously from that point, through that period, I had a girlfriend, I had a best friend and her partner. I remember going out for food and stuff, and like it was wild, mate. I was there for a significant amount of time, as I can recall it, and I can recall those experiences. I lived in a high-rise building. I don't know where it was. I couldn't tell you what city it was, and then I ended up in many different others. Like I was in jail for a bit, and I escaped. Yeah, there was all sorts of crazy bits and bobs that occurred in that period, which terrified me for years after. Literally terrified me to the point I'd have a panic attack the instant I thought about it, or there was a noise that reminded me of it, or a repeated sound, like if a phone call went and the same word was repeated. I don't know why, but it would boom send me straight into a huge anxiety or a panic attack. So yeah, it was, that whole experience was just like.
How long does that when you were in those experiences, let's say, on reflection, how long does that time frame feel like when you're in there?
It felt to me like forever.
Yeah.
It felt to me like forever. And then eventually when I come round out of the coma, I'd had a tracheotomy because I was obviously I was in a coma, and they removed the throat one and put the tracheotomy in to prevent of infection. So when I did wake up, the first thing I wanted to do was just make sure I am not in one of these hells as I saw it then, and that I'm actually back
in the room.
And then this is actually my wife that I'm speaking to, and this is the actual doctor. And but I was very, very wobbly, like not very well at all. And but when I tried to speak to my then wife, I'd had a tracheotomy. So when I spoke, the air was coming out of my throat and no words were coming out of my mouth. And I was just like, and the air was coming up, and I was going, oh, and honestly, I shit myself. Because I was like, I'm still in it. I can't speak. No words are coming up. And then the nurse was going, cover your throat. And I had to cover it there. And then I'd speak like that for a little bit, Yeah. I mean, it was wild. Honestly, it took every ounce of fire I had in me to get through all that. And then But I tell you now, when I got out of there, it was that so grateful, Tony. I was so grateful for being alive, because one of the worst parts was leading up to that operation. I had to wait in hospital because I wasn't well, but also I had to wait in there for when they had a space in the thing to put me into theatre. So I was in there for 6 weeks pre-op in this ward in Birmingham called coronary care, CCU. And I think it's 14 beds in CCU. It's like a square shape. It's 2-to-1, 2 nurses per patient, because that's how sick people are in there, right? Either they're super urgent for a transplant, or they've just had a transplant, or they've had huge heart attacks, or they're not well at all. And literally, I would say maybe once a day, someone would die on that ward. And I remember being in there and thinking to myself,
well, it feels like God's waiting
I
room.
don't want to be in this room. I used to say to the nurses, please, can you just move me from this ward? There was very little natural light in there, Tony. It was just walls, white walls, artificial light, and just beds with people that are dying around me everywhere. And then you see them die, they come and draw your curtains. You can hear, because the machines go, the nurses are doing CPR. They put in the things on them, quack, quack, we're trying to, I call them the doofs. What are they called? Defibrillators,
yeah.
right? And then I just remember just thinking, and then seeing obviously some of the family there, distraught, zipping them up in a body bag. Then when they close the curtains and then come and wheel them out, and then the next guy comes in.
A huge room of trauma, right?
Mate, I was just there every day. Like, this is for 6 weeks. It was horrendous. Genuinely, it was horrendous. I was so landed when I went in for my op, because I was like, thank God, get me out of here. There was no Wi-Fi. There was like 3 tellies in the ward, right, Tony? There was 3 tellies in the ward on wheels, only with like the terrestrial channels on them.
4 channels at that stage. Yeah.
But that was it. So there was a list of queue for the people that had shotgun it, because there was like 14 beds. But we knew they're going to come round sooner or later, because people are dropping dead left, right, and centre, yeah, or they're going for their ops. So it's only a matter of time before the telly comes to you, right? And that's how it happened. I had a few people went their own ways, and then I got the telly. So it was a bizarre, traumatizing, horrendous experience. And when I did go home, eventually, after many months, I was so happy, Tony. I was over the moon to be home, to have my children, have my dogs, to have my ex-wife, my family, all like a great support network, right? And to be so happy to be alive, genuinely. Even though I had this machine and that took a lot of navigating, that initial period was peace, happiness. But
I was going to say, yeah, so you said initial periods, then what comes?
Yeah.
What's post the initial?
Just darkness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because then it hit me like a ton of bricks.
There's so much there to unpack, right?
Yeah. Loss of identity, the not being able to be active, loss of the sport I loved, which the way that they conducted themselves and the insurance thing and how that fell out, I felt like they didn't look after me, my rugby family, or they didn't look after me, which was confusing, I felt betrayal, anger, resentment, bitter. I didn't even watch rugby for those periods. I put all my stuff away. I didn't want to, I put my cap in my underpants drawer and all this kind of stuff. And it kind of really drove me to like a place of, real victim mindset. I was really angry with life, really, But at the same point, kind of happy to be alive. But at the same point, there's so much to sift through that I couldn't be asked to do it as well. And then, like, I just couldn't live with my reality, really, Tony, if I'm honest. It was all too much to bear, and I just thought, I just need a couple of beers, because that's always worked for me in the past. And that's when it started drinking, and then it just spiraled. And I wasn't, between 2016 and 2019, it just got really bad, even on the heart transplant waiting list with this machine that runs my heart.
So the booze took hold at that stage, yeah?
It was just a great exit for me, just to not be in the head.
Numb you.
Just constantly that being in the past, being in the future, always in the mind, negative, incessant negative pattern of thinking. and my life reality and my situation and what I'd been through, but not doing anything about it, just sitting on my arse, playing FIFA for large amounts of the day.
So this is like a 3-year window now, yeah?
Yeah. And then it was just, I just kind of went down that path of just darkness, and it took over. And I had a fluid restriction, right? Because my heart was not in a great, as you know, state. And I was on about 2.5 liters of fluid a day, any fluid. So when I started to drink, they said, no, there's no problem with having a beer or alcohol. It's fine. Just stay within the guideline. So at first it was a couple of pints, and then I was like, then it was 4 pints, but that was 2 liters. So that only left half a liter for other fluid. Then very quickly it moved to, well, what can do that with less fluid? And then it was like, okay, gin,
Spirits
vodka,
come in, yeah.
tequila.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was a slippery slope, and then it was like, oh, how much can I drink of this? Oh, well, I've got 2.5 liters. So as long as I stick within the 2.5 liters, I'm okay. And that meant, okay, well, if I put ice in my drink, that's extra fluid, right? If I put a mixer in my drink, that's extra fluid. So how much of that was I putting in? Well, I thought, well, I don't want to put any of that in because that's going to pinch into it. So then it was like, right, I'm just going to drink straight whiskey. I hated the taste of whiskey. So then it was like, right, next straight thing that I kind of like, tequila, right? Let's try and just do straight tequila. I mean, that didn't end well. And then I navigated to gin, vodka, and then it was just, and I wasn't like your typical brown paper bag alky, Tony. I wasn't drinking 7 days a week. I was just drinking Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Sometimes just Saturday. And sometimes I could go 2 weeks without a drink. So in my head, I was, I was like, I'm not an alky. I can take it or leave it. I don't even drink in a week.
What was the longest period at that stage where you didn't have it?
Probably about 8 weeks.
Yeah.
I went on a stag do to Hamburg, and it was just the most debaucherous thing. I mean, how I didn't die out there, I'll never know. Genuinely, no idea. And came back, and I had like night terrors, and like I was detoxing basically. Got through those 3 days post drink, which I used to always have the most horrendous anxiety. I didn't even move. I mean, if you put a tracker on me, I probably would have walked less than 50 steps for the first 2 days post the drink. Just sit there wallowing, and then as I started to feel better, by Wednesday, come Thursday, maybe have cheeky.
The whisper starts coming.
Yeah, like I'll just have a little pint, little one. Then Friday, and then all along, my ex-wife was begging me, like, Rhys, go and sort your shit out. Please, just speak to me, speak to your mates, go have some therapy. You got a problem with booze. I'm like, how can I don't have a problem with booze.
Yeah, the trickster comes in, convinces you otherwise.
Oh, justifying, rationalizing, minimalizing. And then in the end, mate, it was just beyond a joke. It was beyond, honestly, I genuinely mean this as well. How I am sat here today speaking with you is, but apart from the stuff prior to that, my drinking phase for those 3 years is a miracle I'm alive, mate.
Well, I was just thinking about that at the same time, you've got this huge responsibility where you have to ensure your batteries are charged, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's hard to do when you're absolutely comatose, drunk. No one on this earth can wake you up. And that happened multiple times. Thankfully, I was with friends that knew how to swap my batteries, or they had to ring my ex at 3, 4 in the morning and say, what do we do? He's beeping. And she would have to tell them. There were instances where I was arrested, put into holding cells, and I had a couple of hours left on the machine, no spares. And I'd have to say to them, listen, you can't pinch me. Like, I've got, this machine's only got X amount of life in it. And they would literally have to just drive me home. So then I thought I was invincible because I had this like God complex. They can't even arrest me.
Yeah.
Look at this. Like this, it was a game then. Then I just, by that point, things were really bad. Obviously, you can imagine the toll this took on the family and my partner. Yeah. And no one could talk me out of it, Tone. No one, no amount of help from anyone in my life could deter me. And I had a great support network, genuinely. fantastic, best you could ask for. Incredible wife, beautiful kids, strong family, great friends, but I didn't want none of it. I was just completely in an internal battle. And I was in a huge amount of denial. I couldn't even see that I was in it. I thought I was just okay. I was just getting through. It's just a period. I'll get out of it. I'll shake it off in a minute. And then I crashed the car drunk, 1st of September 2019. And what rolled out that evening was enough for me to say, right, okay, time to reevaluate what's actually going on right now, because things have got carried away.
You're at rock bottom at this stage.
Oh, yeah. Just everything was broken. Everything. My whole life was in tatters.
Anyone in the car with you?
No, luckily I was on my own. And no one else got injured. I just crashed straight into a roundabout and then ran away. Yeah, it was just a disaster zone. I was a disaster zone. And then I stopped boozing at that point. Went to AA. I remember going to about 3 or 4 AA sessions and just saying, I know all this. I'm sorted. I'll just take this little bit of knowledge. I can tell people my story and make them feel sorry for me. And, you know, this feels great. This is empowering. I'm going to go home now. I know all these lessons. Thanks, guys. I don't need to have a sponsor. I'm good. And then not practice any of the teachings. And but I did get sober from 1st September. I rode through Christmas. But by this point, I was...
it's one of the hardest times.
Absolutely.
Christmas to remain sober, because we have so much association,
absolutely,
memory of, and equally everyone around us descends into that alcohol-induced state, you know?
And I was stoked for getting through that, because I knew that was going to be challenging for me. But at the same time, I knew that I wanted that my relationship was gone unless I could stay sober. And so that did get me through that period. But at the same time, I knew I was not good. But then I was also cross-addicting, Tony. I was using CBD THC drops. What was just to sleep became all day. I was playing FIFA for like 8 hours a day, you know, on PS4, just not doing it, just sitting around the house. It was only a matter of time before I would have derailed.
Mm.
And then I went on a family holiday to visit one of my best friends who was sober at the time. And needless to say, a lot of my friends from boarding school, you know, I think 6 of my best mates have had addiction issues. And it's hardly surprising given the environment that we were in. And, but, you know, when I went to that family holiday, when we got there, my ex-wife had said to him, this is all the stuff that he's been up to. And I'd obviously just minimalized what I'd been up to. But then she obviously told him to it straight. At this point, our relationship was in tatters. And we just kind of, that was it. We had, my mates was like, this is unacceptable, mate. Like, what have you been doing? Basically, you're a mess. You're going to go to rehab. And I was like, absolutely no chance. I'm not going to rehab. And I was like, there's nothing wrong with me. I've been sober for 5 months. And he was like, let me tell you, there's a lot bloody wrong with you. So then they, like 3 of my best mates, my dad and my brother, chipped in and staged an intervention, sent me to a rehab facility in Cape Town. And
that's a great support network.
Yeah. I might add, with the help of my ex-wife, a lot of that, you know, wouldn't have been possible without her, obviously. And like I said, Tony, I had a good network. I just didn't want it. And then that was it, mate. That was my salvation. I was at rock bottom. The minute I walked in that rehab center, I just knew, like, I needed to be there, you know.
Mm.
And it was just a beautiful experience that was not beautiful at the time. It was incredibly painful. I felt vulnerable, but it taught me the value in vulnerability, to be able to share with strangers, you know, my damages, my past, my secrets, my darkness, my sadness, and without people that would judge me because they were all exactly the same. And that was another lesson for me, that no matter what age, race, sex, or creed any of those people were, we were just all exactly the same. And that was a teaching for me too, because obviously I didn't see things that way before. So in that very short space of time, the vulnerability, the oneness of us was a teaching. And then it was about really finding, like, looking into the past, which we had to do. You know, we had to write from our inception what we could recall of how we used substances. And I remember writing it out. And the first time I ever did stuff, and it was working in cycles. I can remember looking at these cycles and thinking, oh my God, my entire life is played out in these cycles at different periods of, you know, throughout my entire life. And thinking to myself, oh my God, like, what was the reasoning behind this? And looking at it deeply and seeing the times that I succeeded and the times that I didn't, and the amount of times that when I hit success, then I would hit the self-destruct button.
Dictator victim within it.
All of the time, right? And then I thought, well, where have I gone wrong, actually? And then I could see, right, you know, I've led, you know, I've got no moral compass, actually. And the way that I've been brought up, which it was a great way, by the way. You know, my parents did their absolute best, Tone. They gave me everything I could have wished for. I went to a good school, materially. You know, they were there for me whenever I needed them, financially. But then in those hours, it was kind of that, you know, where did I go wrong? And I think it was so much deep in about the culture of where men had gone, where we are in the culture of, you know, it's fine to just go out and get, you know, leather drunk all the time, you know, get up to whatever, and then it's okay. It's because of the booze. That's the way it is, you know. And then there was you know, me finding out about, like, that's not the way, actually, because it hasn't served me. So then that kind of integrity point and having a value system. So, like, that was important. But probably the most important thing at that point was finding a higher power, like, to get me through it all. And desperation was an incredible tool, because I was so desperate to change. And when I started to offload and feel again, because I didn't feel, I was not feeling.
Numb to feeling at that
Yeah,
stage.
I didn't want to feel, because if I did, then I would escape, numb, soothe, or whatever. So then it was like, how do I begin to feel? You know, and I felt scared. I remember, like, even dreaming of vulnerability, the word. And I remember writing it in my journal in rehab and thinking, like, what is, you know, why does this keep coming up for me? And then, like, I just needed to pray and find a higher power. And then when I started to do that, I started to feel better. But then I was like, well, I'm not going to just blindly believe in God, like we've been told, or I want to find my truth, or a truth about what is God, who is God, you know, what are we? And that was the beauty of where the journey went when I left rehab, was that discovery of just leaning into that.
The who, the what, the why.
Yeah. And that was the beauty, you know, like, I had a very clear distinction, because I had offloaded so much of my baggage in that beautiful environment, like one-to-one group therapy. We did equine therapy, Tone. We did, like, a lot of journaling. So it was very cathartic in that experience. And then to then leave and have a clear understanding of my why. Like, I was doing this for my kids. You know, I did, you know, also then understand about my purpose. Like, what was my purpose thereon? And I was like, right, I've just got to tell people that, like, this way that we've lived. Because I had some sort of, I don't know, awakening, if you can call it that. And I was like, right, I need to tell people that you don't have to live this way anymore. Like, you can actually choose a different way.
There's almost a I've gone through all this so you don't have to moment within that.
Yeah. And I didn't know in what capacity I was going to do that, Tone, obviously, right? And my life, in reality, outside of that bubble of rehab, was still a shit show. I had a lot to go back to, right? So that was a challenge, incredibly challenging, in fact. And you know, in a very short space of time, by doing what I believe my purpose to be, I went on a podcast with a friend and was very, very candid, talked about my past, and my insurance company, which covered me from my heart attack in 2012, heard my podcast. They must have been tracking my socials or something. And it was half of what I was earning at my peak of my career, which I can assure you was a substantial amount of money post-tax. And they heard the podcast and cancelled my payments. So when I came out of rehab, I went from being on, I would say, great money to being on zero. So I then got a letter of eviction from my house.
Who's the insurance company?
Shepherd's Friendly.
Not so friendly, Shepherd's Friendly.
No, not at all. No warning. It was November, pre-Christmas. I had to borrow money from one of my best friends who lives in Bude, and my parents to get the kids Christmas presents. My partner and I had gone our separate ways at this point. My ex-wife, sorry. And so those early days were incredibly challenging, but I had trust. I just had to trust. It was like a lesson of acceptance for me in the house about my past, about surrendering. But surrendering to me meant accepting all that had come before. I had to accept that my career was gone. Like I was in grief. I was grieving my career. I was grieving my life lived before. So like I'd accepted that life was gone. And then I had to accept my situation with my heart. I had to accept my limitations to exercise and movement, and that I couldn't swim, and that I couldn't do certain things, pick my kids up, and all that stuff. I just accept, right? There's no more, I don't have to worry about that stuff anymore. I can just move on. And then it was the best thing that happened to me, Tony. Honestly, it was starting from scratch, but this time on a lot of experience, and knowing that right now, to moving forward from here, I need to build for strong foundations. And what do those foundations look like to me? Those foundations look like integrity, a strong value system, about doing the work. And what did that work look like? And that was the adventure. That was the journey. That was the fun. And at the same time, finding out who is God, and who is my God. And what does that look like? And who am I?
There's something very powerful in that grieving of letting that go.
Oh.
Like, I'm fast approaching 50, and so there's an element of grieving 40s.
Yeah.
In my 40s, an element of grieving my 30s and 20s, and
Yeah.
But the beauty of that process of letting that go is it brings you into the now, right? And there is only that.
Yeah.
And I speak to this with friends, because a lot of friends that have moved into even the parenting circles, let's say, is they're still clinging on to when they didn't have kids.
Yeah.
You can just sense it around it. It's like, no, you have to just let it go.
Yeah.
It's grief, right? And once you let that go, then you're fully in the now, but also fully honoring the role of, whether that's within a relationship, that could be parent or whatever, or also just honoring oneself. This is who I am today,
There's a lot to be said for it. And I think as well, like what you were saying about the parenting piece, about they've got the kids, but they're wishing about, I can remember those times when we didn't have responsibility. But then equally they're like, they're wishing the time away at the same point. But I understand as well, in the modern world, it is challenging with women, not having the support they need. So I understand maybe why they're in that mindset, But so it was the initial feeling that I had, Tone, after rehab, and I remember the feeling was just peace. Just an immense amount of peace, inner peace. And I just remember there was no noise in the mind, zero. And I remember at the time I couldn't even put earphones in because I didn't like the chatter in the head. I couldn't listen to it. And I remember when I came out, everything was different. Smell, my taste buds, visually, colors. And I remember just going on my dog walk and looking around and just being like, oh my God. It's like I'd never seen before. It's like I had never smelt.
That's the true awakening.
And I remember walking slowly, like feeling each footstep with intention and being like, oh my God, like this is life. Like I've missed it all along. I was in such a rush and I was external gratification. And
I can so relate to that. I had an experience with bufo, which is this venom from this Sonoran desert toad, and I came back from and I died within the experience, went into a complete white space, and in the video I am literally dead, and kind of there's an element of what looks like some kind of resuscitation within the process of that. But I remember coming back, and I was actually in Belsize Park in London, and I was walking along, and I don't think I'd ever been as awake or aware to everything. Sounds, sights, like the leaves, I could hear like a leaf move,
They're talking.
So heightened. Like, okay, this is, and now I'm awake, right? That's a true awakening, right? When you get that drop in. And I think there's a real, that bringing it back to privilege, right? Of what it is to be alive in those moments. But it is like seeing or hearing or smelling for the first time, right?
That's how it felt. It felt
which makes you wonder then, like, if you go back along a timeline, why were we so void of that for so long?
Fear.
Because I can't, if I went right back, when would I have remembered ever being that aware?
As a child,
perhaps? Maybe in the real baby state, aware before things are handed to us and distract us. Here you go, here's a rattle.
Yeah. I remember, because I can remember the walk I used to do with my dog, and it was also the start of lockdown, because I went to rehab on the 1st of February and I came out on the 2nd or 3rd of March. Flew back, and I remember on the plane everyone was wearing masks and shit, and I was like, what's going on here? And then getting back, and then obviously a lot of stuff went south in my life at that point, like I mentioned, and then necessary things, and then having that time to just be. And then I remember walking down by the river, and it was the first time that I was ever observed my breath, that it was breathing me, and I was just observing it. And I was just completely blown away. And I just remember standing there, like almost moved emotionally at that my body was breathing without me feeling like I was initiating the breath. And I remember thinking, this is unbelievable. Like, how is this happening? And that was kind of the build again of the romance that I had with the breath. And I remember like that experience, my friend on my second heart attack, he sent me a pranayama yoga book, and I shelved it. Never even looked at it for 7 years. And when I went home, then I was like starting to look in that book about the breath, and then starting to use some of the breathing exercises, just the basic pranayama, like kind of like a box breath, but using the single nostril technique with the 2 fingers on the brow. And then, when I look back at it now, it's just so much synchronicity pointing me towards going to the breath and going in, and then just crying when I was journaling, Tony, in the mornings, just crying with joy, just joy for being alive, and for having the privilege of being here and having a roof over my head and having my kids and having food. And although I was now on universal credit with an eviction notice over my head, with a newly divorced, I just knew it needed to be happy. All of it was necessary. And I trusted her. And what a great time. You know, I was the least material wealth I ever in my life. Broke, newly divorced, eviction notice. And I was crying in the mornings with joy. Immense happiness. Probably the first time in my adult life that I had felt that. Now, that was necessary for me. And it was still very, very challenging. And obviously coming out of that, the trauma of lockdown and the divorce and my 3 years of alcoholism had a huge detrimental effect on my children.
Yeah.
And of course, my ex. So that was the next challenge, Tony. And I'm not going to delve too deeply into that, just out of respect for them. But that was incredibly, it was probably the hardest part of all of it. You know, and then meeting a new partner amidst all of that, and then having that conscious relationship, which I'd never had, you know, and kind of holding space for people, each other, like my partner and I, to heal in relationship, which to me has been a new found, you know, experience, one that is incredibly powerful, I might add, because it's incredibly triggering.
Yeah.
And to notice it in real time and then have to own that as well. You know, it's where it's at, I think, for me. And so that was challenging. And, you know, that consistency has allowed for a space that I'm in now with my kids. And that's been, my daughter turned 18 last week on Wednesday. And my son's also 16 and a half. And my two eldest kids are doing fantastic. It's my eldest daughter's wedding in South Africa in February. So it's taken some time for them to see the consistency, to build the trust back with me.
Trust, I was going to go with trust.
Yeah, you know that, because also hooligan, like he has this larger than life savage that just like can't, there's not enough booze in the pub, you know, loud, brash, outrageous, and then all of a sudden peaceful, still, you know, large as life conscious in many ways, but conscious, listening to, you know, meditating, listening to completely different types of music. And all of a sudden they're like, you know, you can imagine as a child, it's like, wow, I mean, who is this guy?
It's a very important message for them though.
Oh my God.
Because
of course
I grew up with the language like a leopard never changes their spots.
Yeah.
To which I now reply, well, firstly, I'm a human, not a leopard, right? Do you know what I mean? It's like, what a thing to say.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, but I'm not a leopard. But it shows them that the ability to change, right? That you can go through, look, I mean, life's extraordinary, right?
Incredible.
You know? But it's there to be lived, right? And at the same time, within that, we can become anything we want to be, right? And you're demonstrating or have demonstrated the full embodiment of change there, right? And where you can go, like how deep it can go, how you can hit rock bottom, but then how you can be completely reborn out of that experience to be who you are today, right? There's such powerful learning in that.
Oh, it was, you know, and the teachings came within how my biggest weaknesses, Tony, as a man from my conditioning, was people pleasing, was no boundaries, and certain other aspects. Obviously, you know, there was many, but those two especially. So then the challenge then of turning it around, but especially with my parenting, about being led from a place of guilt, but then also wanting them to love me, because knowing that I'd hurt them. Now that was the true challenge for me over the last 3 years. Accepting that, but knowing that I can only truly make amends by showing up every day and being the best version of me that I can. And that meant doing things that were so far out of my comfort zone that it's taken me so much work to achieve, boundaries, being able to show tough love to my children, 2 things that I was completely unable to do because they triggered me at my core of my issues, which were people pleasing, boundaries, So life's constantly throwing these things at you, Tone,
Yeah, there's responsibility, there's ownership there, taking ownership, right?
Yeah, of course. And owning it,
Exactly.
We can all put our head in the sand.
Yeah.
And not fully own our stuff because it feels awful and guilty.
Well, we live in a world of distractions where it's so much easier now to put our head in the sand.
Yeah. So easy.
I don't need to be in the moment now. I can be distracting myself here, and to take true ownership of that, of who the man is now sitting in the room, right? Wow. Huh? So now it's taking all of that, and putting that out into the world, and again, speaking to that. No wonder there's an inspirational speaker there, right? And no wonder you want to gift people with the breath because, think about that, like from what you explained from the bypass where they collapse your lungs versus to then one day being, oh, my body's breathing. Oh, wow, this is extraordinary what it is to breathe. Like that's like breathing for the first time, right?
Yeah, that's how I felt.
And enabling others with that. And also to unpack all of that over time within the breath, right?
And being able to hold the space, Tone, because I'm coming from a place of deep understanding that no matter what comes through the door, that it's okay, I can hold all of that stuff of theirs with reverence, without judgment, because who am I to judge what people have done or what their experiences are? Because life is savage. It can be incredibly challenging, right? And that's okay.
I think it's the relatability, being relatable as a piece, especially from, from speaking to others, holding space, coaching. I think when we have this timeline of stuff that's happened to us, but we've then the realization it happened for us, but also to be able to speak to that from a real place of vulnerability. It's the vulnerability that makes things so relatable. And I think from a men's perspective, where we think we need to put a lid on that, really it's being able to express yourself and share your story is what will make it so much more relatable for others, for them to connect to. You'll recognize it sitting in circles. Like you sit in a circle and once one person, and there's always something there's a thread, something brings everyone together in that room. It always is. But once someone starts sharing, it's then others that perhaps would have found it difficult to. It instantly opens up the door.
Yeah.
It
is. Yeah. It's a beautiful, space to be in, to be vulnerable. And I think men are getting it though as well, You can see the tides turning. Out of desperation too though, Tony, And the statistics speak to that, right?
The statistics speak to it, yeah. I've just come off the back of this Man Men March for November, and I was speaking a lot to that. But there's also this, the vulnerability piece of being able to hold your hand up and say, I need help right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And having a support network around us that will step in and support us, of course, and answer that call. There's also, I think, having the role models is important.
Yeah.
You know, and this isn't to take anything away from dads or my dad or his dad, but there was also a lot of post-traumatic stress disorder for those guys, right? Post-war, and then what we had to put a lid on and possibly couldn't release or let out, and the guilt and the shame and everything else, and then there is a dismantling of that, and it seems like now it feels very much like now is the time, right?
Yeah.
Like we have the modalities, we have the space, we have more and more role models, and now it's very much like we started the conversation that you were expressing at the beginning, and what's where you feel you're at is the embodiment, right?
Yeah, I think it's where, you know, most therapies are very helpful, totally. Don't get me wrong, they all benefited me in some level, but the true change came from embodying the lessons and feeling, because that's been the teaching for me is that, you know, we've come here to feel, but then we, from experiences or traumas, we then do everything not to feel.
Yeah, the fear of feeling.
Yeah. And that is what distracts us and makes us want to escape or numb. And then when actually we come round in your own time, however that may be, through whatever modality you find, is then to be able to allow that to feel, to truly feel, you know, everything, all of it, the good, the bad, everything in between.
Or even bringing it back to that simple gratitude or privilege, that their feelings, not how we tend to intellectualize in a way, oh, I'm grateful, rather than the actual really feeling of I'm grateful. I put something up the other day, and I was speaking to the event and this asking for help, and how I was about to say how proud I was of the community, and really it was like, no, it's like, again, it's not about the praise, I'm proud of you, it's you should be proud of yourself, you know? And then it's like, flipped it, it's like, oh, they're feelings again. I have to be able to feel proud of myself.
Yeah.
I have to feel love for myself. I have to feel like I appreciate myself. I have to feel like I am worthy, I am enough. And their feelings again, they're our internal world. And if we can feel that, then again, we shouldn't then find ourselves looking out into the external world for that.
Yeah.
Like the approval even, you know?
I was about to say appraisal, yeah. Yeah, but
it's all within.
I could, you know, went to your Man March, watching it over Insta and all your posts, seeing that, like, how gutted you were with your cankle.
Yeah.
And then, but having that, you know, like asking for help. And you could still see, like, we still got, I could see you were gutted, but that you were asking for help was like, so it was like, it so like filled you as well, didn't it?
Yeah.
When then people started posting and taking up the mantle and doing their little bits, and like, yeah, that was what was for me. It probably made it better, actually. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, to run 25 marathons in 25 days, incredible feat. I mean, how many did you do? 17?
I did nine. I think 19. I think it was 19. Yeah.
Which again, obviously, just an amazing, immense physical, incredible achievement. But to do that also with the cankle and then asking for help and men stepping up to the plate and doing that, and
because it was like a real roller coaster, because the event originally we were meant to be going from Dorset to Somerset.
Yeah, and then the weather, wasn't it?
And then this storm hit, so 2 parts of the sections were gone. Then then the ferry crossings would have been closed, and then support vehicles changed. So okay, leopard spots, we can change this event. So then it changed, but then that meant it lost some of the magic of people that would have joined on those particular sections, which was about this bringing men together to march the path. And then it turned into, because I was out there a lot on my own, and then it almost went back to what the message was meant to be about, running as a pack, not the lone wolf. And suddenly I'm now the lone wolf out there again.
Yeah.
Which then brought in the language of the lone wolf out there running. And it was like day 13, I could do this. It feels like I could do this forever.
Mm.
And then the next day, boom, here you go, here's a cankle. And then asking for help, because then it's like, it's a we effort, right?
Yeah.
This isn't about I, this is about we.
Mm. How is the cankle?
More like an ankle.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, if your ankle and your calf have a baby, it's a cankle. There was no ankle. You couldn't see the ankle. That was the beauty of it. It reminded me of like one of those, elephant legs or something. But it's
an ice spine. It looked like an ice spine.
Yeah, I can load it and I can see my ankle, and that's for now. That's I'm good with that. And again, I can also already zoom out, observe it, and that definitely happened for me, not to me. I was in a sweat lodge. Like, that's what you do. I mean, you do 14 back-to-back marathons. You go and sit in a sweat lodge, of course.
Why not?
And we were on round 2, and this voice dropped in. It's actually from a guy called Justin Caffrey, and I was on the Land's End John O'Groats run in 2019. And again, I had a cankle. On the penultimate day, I'm taping my leg up in this car, suffering from real procrastination of like, got to go through this kind of moment. And it was 47 miles to cover on this day to kind of make mileage up. And this Justin, who's in Greystones, is friends with the Happy Pair, and he left a voice note to say, you're the minority of the minority of the minority of the minority. Remember that. Just take it one step, one breath, one step, one breath. And that's become a mantra of mine, this one step, one breath. I kind of park the minority of the minority of the minority. In the morning of the sweat lodge, I'm with Katerina in the kitchen, and we're having this conversation around the cankle, and I say, I wonder if the fact that I was born with club feet and the way that perhaps they'd realigned them, or the procedures I went through to get me up onto 2 feet, whether that has led to some weakness in the ankles, and therefore when I am on these big events, or there is the endurance side of it, is they seem to be the weakness, you know, perceived weakness. Because again, when how many people, the minority of the minority of the minority, right? So sitting in the sweat lodge that evening after the morning of this conversation, the second round in the sweat lodge, this voice drops in, and it's Justin, you're the minority of the minority of the minority. And then the next part was then, what percentage, how low does that percentage of the minority of the minority of the minority need to get down to, Tony, before you feel that you're strong enough on your own 2 feet?
That's what came through round 2.
Round 2 in the sweat lodge.
How was that?
Oh, profound, right?
Wisdom.
You know? Yeah. And again, it's like it's always on these events, I get such lessons, but that was, again, like, talk about hormetic stress and taking yourself to the point.
Yeah.
Sweat lodge is powerful, you know? Talk about being in the moment. Yeah. I mean,
the heat
and the breath in that heat
burns.
Everything burns, you know. It's like but again, I think it's another opportunity or practice and ceremony where we have they're rites of passage, and they're an opportunity to step outside those limiting beliefs and behaviors. And if we talk about awakening again and being really in the moment, another great practice for that.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I've seen a couple of profound experiences. Rebirths, you want to call them.
Rebirths.
From Thomas Gall, you know?
Yeah.
Obviously, with my heart, I've done like a door. And that's my edge, right, Tone? It's like,
all we can do is play with the edges.
I can just go to my edge, and my edge for me, because of my blood pressure and my heart, is that, you know, I've got a machine that for a start struggles in that temperature, but if I slip it under the thing outside, you know, that's okay. And then it's obviously I've got an open wound, so making sure that it doesn't get too slippery and sweaty. And So it's just feeling, and I know I'm super sensitive to my blood pressure anyway, because I've got
Yeah.
used to it over the years. So I know, like, if my eyeballs feel like they're going to pop out of my head, or a few other bits and bobs, then it's time to step away. So I've done a few, and I've known, right, okay, no need to ego to come in. I'll just tap out here.
I think there's so much in the beginning of the conversation around breath with you, man. I think that's ultimately the rebirthing work, right?
Mm.
You know?
Yeah, no, I'm doing a course now with Martin McFeely. I'm still trying to get his surname right, but Performance Through Health.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just in the infancy of that 6-month mentorship with him. So just diving into the science and the functionality and, performance, health, lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Just a really deep dive, and just can't wait to learn, more about it and just go deep into all of that space.
And hold that space.
Mm.
Love you, man.
Yeah, love you too, brother.
Honestly, your energy, your joy, your smile, it's powerful, man. And that story, again, I was blown away in that moment of medicine, but like what we've just unpacked today, it's like, it's going to take me a bit of time to digest it all,
Yeah.
Where can people find you?
So, yeah, Instagram, Rhys_Thomas33, LinkedIn, Rhys Thomas. I've got a website, realrhysthomas.com. Yeah, so, I do corporate or business talks around my inspirational story, as a inspirational speaker. So, or, I do corporate breathwork events. I hold space for anything breathwork, especially conscious connected. So, yeah, if you need me, come find me.
If you're in that corporate world, this work's so important.
Yeah,
it really is, and we're all carrying something.
All of us,
and that can change in a breath. So, thank you, brother. Thank you for being so open to sharing all of that.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the platform, brother.
And let's have a little cheers. We jump up and have a hug.
Yeah, sweet.
We can finish it there, brother. Take your time. I'm good. I can't problem. As always, I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. If you feel drawn to do so, then please subscribe to the show, leave a review, and don't forget to share. Sharing is caring. It really helps me to help others. If you're drawn to immersing yourself in any of the NatLife experiences, or see yourself as a NatLife coach, head to tonyriddle.com for details of how to immerse yourself in the community. You can follow my adventures on Instagram @TheNaturalLifestylist. Big shout out to Simon from We Are the Clarks for producing, filming, editing. Much love.